Hi everyone, my name is Mary Kate Carrigan, and this is my presentation on Is Social Media Doing More Harm Than Good? So let's get a little bit of background information on body image in women. Throughout many points of time in history, there were constantly people telling women how to look, how to act, and how to feel. So you can imagine that any form of imperfection, such as a small ounce of fat on their bodies or a wrinkle on their faces, made them undesirable to their mates and to society. Schick and their peers found that the perfect body image ideas are starting around age 5. It is actually surprising to many knowing that one's toys or movies or games are actually influencing young women at the early age of 5. Within the 21st century, the judgment of women is completed now anonymously behind a simple technology or behind a simple screen, creating these unrealistic goals for women to follow. Tigeman and Pallavi found a study in 2010 monitoring Facebook. So, the more women spent on Facebook, the worse their mood. So, to generalize it into the topic that we're talking about, the more women were comparing themselves to the images, the thin media ideal images, the worse their mood. So, given past research and the study to further examine how unrealistic images of women and realistic images can impact a woman's body, it is hypothesized that the women exposed to unrealistic images will have more negative emotions than those exposed to realistic images. So, our participants were 35 female undergraduate college students at Mount St. Mary's University. There was no prior knowledge of the study from the participants, and this was done to create an honest data. And the extra credit for their psychology classes were given, but there was no other compensation for being part of the study. For the method and the materials, our images were a set of 10 unrealistic photos of female models and 10 realistic photos of female models. The realistic photos came from a clothing company called Aerie. Aerie created a new program called Aerie Real or Photos Untouched. There were a variety of body shapes and sizes that showed women newer ways of beauty standards, and all the models looked completely comfortable within their bodies and in the photos. Compared to the unrealistic photos that came from Victoria's Secret's Instagram, women were highly sexualized or photoshopped. They were wearing lingerie or things that objectified them or showcased their skinny figures, creating the barrier between these realistic and unrealistic photos. Then we used a visual analog scale. So there were 5 emotions: happy, angry, depressed, anxious, and confident, and 3 attributes: physically attractive, satisfied with body size, and fat. And the participants would rank on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is meant they have low body satisfaction, and 10 being they have high body satisfaction. So, how does this apply to what we were talking about with the emotions? So, on the pre-test and the post-test, the visual analog scale would say, in this present moment, how happy are you feeling? So, 1 being not so much and 10 being very much. And it would continue for all the 8 items. During this photo and during the viewing of photos, participants wrote down on a piece of loose leaf in front of them anything they noticed about the photo, the model, or even the framing of the photo, just so we could make sure that the effect was actually occurring. It's important to note that the both of the groups were randomly assigned, so there wasn't a unequal distribution. So essentially, it's what we said before, where student takes the pretest visual analog scale, and with that, they rate from 1 to 10 on items and how they are feeling before viewing the photos. And this is an example of one of the photos shown to those exposed to group 1, and that is the airy group. And then they would take the post test, the same as the pretest, and rate how they are feeling after viewing the photos. The same would go for the Victoria's Secret group 2, and that is important to note because it's the same process, just different photos. Let's look at the results. So we conducted an independent samples t-test on the difference between the pretest and the post-test VAS scores. So what is an independent samples t-test? Well, an independent samples t-test is used in a between subject design where there is 2 groups being tested for 1 variable. So in our case, it was unrealistic body images and realistic body images being tested for body satisfaction levels. Group 1 body satisfaction levels and moods were after exposure were marginally significant compared to group 2. So if you look at our p-value is normally zero point 0.5. So with that, you want to make sure that the exposure is and the hypothesis is being supported. So our thing was zero point zero 0.06. So if you compare that to 0.05 as the actual p-value, it shows that it was marginally significant, meaning that our hypothesis was almost supported, but it wasn't. So it was off by zero point 0.1. And that is thanks to our Cohen's d. So it indicates a medium to high effect size. And showing that it may be a practical difference between the change of scores of the two groups, meaning that if there may have been a longer exposure, we might have had a practical difference or a stronger p value. So there was a strong trend that women exposed to unrealistic body images had more negative mood changes. And as said before, there was a marginal significance. And in both this study and the Tigeman study, even though they were 10 years apart, it shows that the impact of media on women is detrimental to investigate in order to create a better future for females. So, we're going to talk about our limitations for now. So, our sample size was actually smaller than most studies that were conducted. Most studies that were conducted were either 100 plus women, and we only had 35. There was a short time frame of exposure, which was 10 to 15 minutes, when other studies have been 2 hours. And the study was conducted after months of quarantine at home during the COVID-19 pandemic, where women have been constantly exposed to these images and these thin ideals, and they almost become desensitized to it. So, future directions, we want to include male participants. There's a thing called muscular dysmorphia where males can look at muscular men and almost feel negatively influenced about their own bodies. And there should be a longer time frame with a longer exposure so that we can get a better effect and a better idea on what images are impacting which people. I want to say thank you to the participants for participating in my study, and I want to thank you, my mentor, Dr. Mindy Coral, for being so kind and so helpful during this process, and thank you for watching my presentation. Thank you.